Jimmy Younis joins us from Attainable Dreams to talk about being an educator in recovery. He works with groups all over the country and uses his high energy, direct authenticity to talk about planning on and creating a lifetime of recovery. He teaches principles like unmanageability, relationships, and cognition of choices, beliefs, and behaviors. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery, ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
The Illuminate Recovery podcast is brought to you by Illuminate Billing Advocates. Make billing and collection simple with leader in substance abuse and mental health billing services. Verification and analysis of benefits, pre-authorizations, utilization management, accurate claim submission and management, denial and appeal management, and industry-leading reporting. Improve your practice's cash flow and your ability to help your clients with Illuminate Billing Advocates.
Jimmy Younis is on the podcast today with Kurt and I. We're super excited. Jimmy is the founder at Attainable Dreams. He is very passionate about his recovery and education, and he takes that with him everywhere. At Attainable Dreams, they make recovery fun using humor, teamwork, and play combined with several modalities. As a leader, he educates people in fun and engaging ways. His favorite part of working is the opportunity to motivate teams towards accomplishing their goals in all areas of life. Jimmy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So something that is always good to start with is, give our listeners a little bit of background of your dreams as a little boy and how you ended up in the recovery industry.
Yeah, so, the way I ended up in the recovery industry is I'm a person in recovery. My story kind of starts up in Massachusetts. I was a heroin-addicted school teacher, and my life had become completely unmanageable. And I finally made the decision to go to treatment down in Florida. While I was in treatment, I attended a program, and the groups were not my favorite part, and I felt like they should have been. And I made a big mess. I said, I want to learn, but I don't really like the people who were teaching it, and they were kind of like, oh, you can do better, Jimmy. So that was when I ran my first educational class for my peers, and that's kind of starts my journey in working in the recovery field and kind of being in recovery in Florida, then moving here to Georgia to help open a couple treatment facilities, and then I started Attainable Dreams. Yeah.
So how was that first class? Was that
class was,
because if the teacher says, "Come on up, let's hear you give it a shot," that's not exactly like we want to see you succeed circumstance, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna be completely transparent. When I had that discussion with a therapist, I was an angry young man, and I had the therapist had said, Jimmy, I was just frustrated. I was angry that day, and I was kind of like a little mad because I didn't know if I was going to get high, and I didn't know if I was going to stay clean. And the guy leading the group had said, Jimmy, I don't care what you say, I'm not getting loaded, because I had said something fly off my tongue, kind of probably told him to go fuck himself or something like that. And, next thing I know, he said, I don't care what you say, I'm not getting loaded. And I was like, oh, you're not getting loaded? Oh, you're not getting loaded. And I just got really angry. I stood up. I ripped the book in half. I threw it down on the ground. I spit on it. I grabbed a chair. I threw it across the room. And I was like, you're not getting loaded. You're not getting loaded. And I just stormed out. I started walking down the street. And I remember as soon as I walked out, I was just like, what the fuck am I going to do, dude? Like, what am I going to do? Seriously. I had a bag with glasses that were held together with rubber bands, the same pair of contacts I had used for 2 years. You know, I had like 2 T-shirts, granola bars. Where was I going to go? You know, and by the grace of God, these people came chasing me down. They brought me back in. They calmed me down. They gave me another chance. And, yeah, that was what happened in that group that pissed me off so bad, that made me say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that no one ever has to sit through some stupid educational class like this.
So what do you do differently? How'd you fix it?
Well, what happened, I said, you know what, they said, oh, Jimmy, you can do better, you stay clean and you come back and you show us that you can do better. So I was like, bet that up. All right, cool. Yeah, I'll do that. So I stayed clean. I came back at 6 months, and I said that you have to hire me at $25 an hour. I told them, as a person with 6 months clean and an elementary education degree, I went back in there and said, I'm doing so good, you need to pay me $25 an hour. And they laughed in my face, and I frankly laughed back at them and was like, you think that's funny, dude? I am Captain Recovery right now, and by hiring me to come into your facility and just be around your clients, this is what you got to pay me. And they brought me on at 6 months clean as the highest paid behavioral health technician, just because I stood up for myself and I just like told them that, you know, I'm really gonna do a lot, and I did. I still have clients till this day telling me how much I impacted their recovery just in that time frame of my own recovery and my own journey. So, yeah, it was a good time, man. Good times. But yeah, that was what I did about it.
That's incredible, Jimmy. I can only imagine how, you know, working with you as a therapist would definitely challenge every part of the job, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, I just did not want anybody to feel as though recovery was boring, recovery was stupid, because that's not what I wanted. And I want above and beyond for my recovery to make it fun and engaging and like to have a place to a reason to not get high. That, you know, I couldn't wait to go back and tell people about what these answers that I had, that you didn't have to live this way anymore, and, you know, it doesn't have to be boring, and I went through this program too, and yeah, so the therapists were excited to have me too. You know, I'm actually I'm always surprised at the support I get from the therapists, the clinical directors, and everything when I come into these facilities and when I'm giving my talks, because it's almost like they see something in me that I don't see in myself. And, you know, sometimes I feel in these groups I cross every single boundary I can, but by the end of it, the clients are like, I actually understand it. I've never been able to understand this my whole life, and finally I feel like I do.
And do you step on some puzzle boxes along the way?
What do you mean by that?
By that phrase, I mean, is your approach well received by everyone?
Yeah. Yep, 100%.
See, because even hearing you tell the story, I think, like, I can see a couple of things that tie together, which I want to come back to in a second. But like right off the bat, you've got like this confidence, right? You've got some volume. You've got, I could see your approach actually rubbing certain people completely wrong, right? Like, and to hear you say that you don't like piss some people off along the way is totally shocking to me. And so it makes me wonder, do you do that along the way, and can you recognize that, or do you not recognize that
it's not a good fit for everyone.
Yes, that's a great thing that you're bringing up. I have had experiences where, my approach isn't working, and I'm totally open to adjusting my approach so that a client is able to attain the information. And Attainable Dreams hasn't always been the approach that it's been today. I've had very intimate growth moments where clients have sat me down and said, Jimmy, I love what you're teaching. It's just every single time you say fuck, I just tune out. And I'm like, wow, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. This is just an approach that I have that seems to work with most. If you feel that it doesn't work, thank you so much for your courage and your bravery to come and share that with me. I will happily adjust my teaching method so that you are able to attain this information, and eventually it slips out, but they see me trying to make the change. And I think that as a person in recovery, and for me to apply these principles in all my affairs, it's important for me to be open-minded and honest and willing that a client may see something in me that I don't see in myself. And if they're showing me a shortcoming, I need to be open to humbly ask them on how I can change that,
Yeah, I could see that, especially the language thing. I could see people bristling, like on this podcast, you're going to get a nice parental advisory at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
Jimmy says the naughty word, everybody, so be ready. But at the same time, and that's part of why I asked, because like I can see, like the confidence and the whatever, I could see it being a little hard to stomach in this like sensitive, connecting, like very thoughtful and deep industry, right? Because we've got a sensitive crowd in our industry. At the same time, when I start to kind of put the pieces together of who you are and hear, okay, yeah, you were frustrated, you were mad, you were dealing with, do I go into recovery or not? As a adolescent adult male, right? Meaning like you kind of are stuck in a certain place at that point anyways, like you mentioned. At the same time, you have an elementary school teaching degree, right? So like you have this training in how to connect with children. which frankly we know about a lot of addicts. Depending on when they start into their addiction, emotionally a lot of them are children, right? Including where I was at that point, and many others. And so in some ways I could see that being a way to really cut through some of that and connect in communicating in a different way. And then also briefly before we got started today, you mentioned you're doing some other things around, outside of this industry, including comedy. And that's kind of the story with comedy too, right? Like it's a habitual line crossing game of where do you push the limit with that comedy? You're going to offend people kind of constantly, right? And that's when to back off a little bit. This industry is not used to that, right? And so I could see that being kind of an interesting dynamic, right? Especially as you kind of push into these public groups or groups where you don't necessarily know all the audience. And I see that being like kind of a different and welcomed approach in a lot of ways. So that's interesting.
Yes, thank you. And, it wasn't easy, trying to convince people to give me a shot either, Everyone's kind of just like, Jimmy, what do you got? And I'm just like, I got this idea. I got this dream. I'm really good at teaching people. People listen to me, I can teach your clients, and that was kind of all I was saying. I was going around saying, I'm the best group facilitator around, writing my business cards down on a Post-it note saying, give me a shot, saying my business cards are in the mail, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, okay, Jimmy. And now that was back in 2019, 2021, 2 years later, I'm at 12 different facilities. And they're eager over the content that I'm presenting. The companies are telling me that, without a shout of a doubt, the clients love coming in and hearing my content. Even the ones who were, most resilient at first, they can't wait to come in and get a breath of fresh air from the content that I'm teaching and just the atmosphere that I bring in and the positiveness and that I bring it into. So.
Yeah, I think I could see, obviously, as we know in addiction, there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of that, there's some other mental illness things that get tied into that too, anxiety and depression, all those kinds of things. So I could see the positivity and the energy, being really great for some groups, right? And we know that in the industry in general, right? We've got facilities that specialize in different age groups, different backgrounds, different, sexes or whatever. As you're getting invited back to these groups consistently, do you feel like you're seeing a similar demographic in the groups that are really relating and responding to your facilitating?
Like a specific age group, or like males or females, or
anything along those lines. I mean, I doubt you get sent to the adolescent centers, for 10 to 14-year-olds very consistently.
You'd be surprised,
right?
You'd be surprised. That's where I do a lot of my volunteer work,
Or they say, we love you here, but you got to just be careful with the big boy words.
You'd be surprised,
They don't even care.
When I sit down with teenagers, they are like, Jimmy, I've never had a therapist like you. I've never had anyone like you who I feel this comfortable with, and they share everything that they're going through. I have some clients that I walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, Attainable Dreams comes here too. Jimmy, you're here too. And by the third class, they're trying to hang on to me after to ask me questions about how can I be honest in this relationship, or Jimmy, how can I, practice humility when I'm doing this, or whatever the case may be. So I think it's at first it's almost shocking. It's something that they've never seen before. It's like, who the heck is this guy, and why is he so happy about recovery and stuff? And then by the third time, by the third group or second group in, they're like, I see, it makes sense. What he's saying actually makes sense, and I might actually listen to this guy. It's almost like a TV series, The first episode, you can't rank a TV series based on the first episode. You gotta get a couple into it so that you can really see how good of a season it is. So,
sure. Outside of your energy and kind of your just personality, what's different about the way that you approach these conversations and these discussions?
I use a lot of my personal experience, strength, and hope for one. I also have a teaching method that I use that it just pushes the conversation in a direction. Me as a person, I have I'm an artist, so I have a book that I wrote that's a compilation of all my artwork available on Amazon called Poppy Seed Poetry. I'm an actor, so I have an IMDb page. My stage name is Jimmy Diamond. I've been doing stand-up comedy for over a decade now. I've been teaching over a decade now, both addicts and kids, So these, and then when I get into the classroom, or the group room, as they call it, I think one thing that separates me from other facilitators is, my confidence, my ability to carry a conversation, my ability to use my experience as a vessel to understand these life principles and how to apply recovery to your everyday life. I think that's another thing that I do that's different than other facilitators at their own facility is I just apply these things to your actual life. I want to know what you're going through, what you got going on outside of here. I want to know why you ended up in here and what you got going on that is the thing that you've been looking for, that is going to best help you with your recovery by walking through. And, you know, other facilitators do that, but I think their job is more to be the therapeutic side, and my job is more educating them on these are some free, simple things that you can do to increase your recovery dramatically, you know, and this is what it would look like.
You mentioned you had some other people that have worked for you in the past too. How well do you feel like that curriculum transitions over?
Oh, to another facilitator?
Yeah.
If they, if they are able to teach, they rock it. You know, I had the other facilitator I had, and have had. They are just little rock stars in recovery themselves. You know, and they have their own personal journey, and they're able to, you know, provide the material the same way that I am. And at times I hear the same feedback that I get from myself about the facilitators that I have come into the facilities as well.
So I love what you're doing, Jimmy. I think it's really valuable, and I can tell you're super, super passionate about it. I'm really curious about your background in elementary education. Did you teach? Did you teach school?
Yeah, so I was a substitute teacher, and then I was just a substitute. So I taught a lot. Yeah.
Where did your addiction come in at that point?
My addiction was in college. You know, I found myself addicted in college to Percocet and near the end heroin, and it was just, you know, I made the decision, you know, I can either go back home and become an addict and try to juggle it, or I can go back home and get clean. And, you know, this is the choice I have to make. And I remember consciously like making the decision to hit up my dealer and spend all this money and make it happen, and thinking that I was able to manage my powerlessness. And that's one thing that I talk about in my groups is, you know, at one time I thought I could manage my powerlessness. You know, as a kid I thought I could manage my powerlessness by saying, okay, our parents are going away this weekend, so Saturday night everybody comes over, we'll smoke pot, dude, and, you know, we'll watch TV and we'll eat snacks, and I know that I'm going to have no power over how I am under the influence of this drug, so I reserve a time later to use it, and it's all first step stuff. And by the time I got out of college, I was an addict, just trying to stay clean. And, you know, teaching at that time was just at times I was the best teacher in the world, at other times I was the worst teacher in the world. So
I'm just imagining you in front of a classroom of these kids, and you know, having your personality and your energy, and having them watch you and interact with you. Just it seems like you just liven up that class.
Oh, they loved it. They really, you know, it's a blessing to have this thing about me that just captures people, you know. And, you know, my students back in the day, the high school students saw it, the middle school students saw it, the elementary kids were excited when I'd pop in, you know. And it's funny because now it's almost like I'm almost kind of doing a similar thing now, where I'm just kind of like a substitute therapist. I pop in and the clients are like, Jimmy's here? Oh, thank goodness, you know. And then by the end, then it's like, oh yeah, we're doing resentment today. And they're like frustrated but they're excited because they know that it's going to be a fun experience. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to have pleasure while experiencing this pain. It's like exercise for the mind, you know, instead of for the body. You know, you're going to feel pain while you're exercising, but afterwards you're going to feel better. Like, in my group, you may feel some cognitive pain, you know, but by the end, you're going to feel a little bit more relieved and a little bit better.
So do you still teach? Do you still go back and substitute at school, or are you pretty much done with that?
I don't do that anymore. You know, when I first got clean, everybody was like, why don't you go back to teaching? You know, you have your teacher's degree. You should go back to being a teacher. And I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to. The only thing I need to change is everything. What, am I supposed to go back to that, dude? I'm not doing that, bro. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I am not going back to teaching kids. I can't.
So you pick the adults, which is awesome. You pick people that relate to you and your recovery story, and you connect with them. Talk about some of the topics, your group topics, some of the things that you address when you're doing these groups.
Awesome. Yeah. So we break down. We have a couple of different things. We do decision making. We do a whole feelings course. We do a whole character defects and shortcomings. We do amends, but the biggest ones that a lot of people are very receptive to are feelings and our decision-making course. Our decision-making course is basically like the first 3 steps broken down pretty simply about just and how they relate in everyday living. You know, what's the problem? Where's the problem? How can I? It's one. There is a problem, and I need to identify it. And then I go through exactly how do we identify a problem? How do we define what a problem is? How do we prevent problems? And how do we progress towards solutions? And then we look into solution. What could work? Is there something that might work? You know what I mean? I mean, what do I have to do to make it work? Has it worked for other people? How does it work for them? Where can I get these answers? How can maybe I need to draw a map, you know? And we do all different types of activities. And it's funny because the activities that coincide with the content that I teach are actually where you'll see a lot of the elementary educational type of content introduced. You know, I take a lot of my elementary type of activities that I did in school and I apply them to recovery today. So I have a whole bunch of really cool, interesting, different engaging hands-on activities that I do just to get clients to understand these different parts of decision-making or feelings like resentment, fear, you know, shame, guilt, understanding relationships. Relationship is a long class. That's like a 4-part class where we understand how addiction has affected our relationship with people, objects, and concepts. And we go through how that has just made our lives unmanageable on several different degrees. So yeah, I mean, that's a little bit about the program, and a little bit about the content that we teach and what it's broken down and how it's kind of broken down.
Very powerful, and I can see that it very much, you know, is very strong on those 12 steps. I imagine this is not an uncommon piece, but I would think that people have a really hard time, you know, really accepting that their life is unmanageable. Is that something you come across, and how do you address it?
You know, I find that it varies on levels of care. So depending on the level of care depends upon the degree of unmanageability they see. I mean, I don't go beyond decision making on a detox level. They are not going to respond to talking about feelings, you know. What they will respond to is just being able to identify the areas of unmanageability. And that's kind of what I focused on. And that's pretty abundantly clear about how the addiction causes unmanageability on like a detox level, you know. But once you get to like a partial hospitalization or intensive outpatient, the unmanageability from the addiction becomes a little bit more insidious. So, you know, that's where you get more into the maybe how does the desire to use, not like in detox, it's like how does using make your life unmanageable. When I get into IOP and PHP, I'm talking about more just how does the feeling of wanting to use make your life unmanageable. Because, you know, if we were going to break down addiction is a mental and physical dependence on a substance, thing, or activity. And if we're going to break it down, then after detox, it's all mental, baby. You know, we got the physical game in detox, and then from there, I mean, it's depending on the drug and the individualized treatment plan, I'm talking a lifetime of mental recovery. And if I'm not honing in on that aspect of my recovery, then I'm losing 90% of the game, you know. And that's what I try to focus on outside of detox. But detox, the way I present unmanageability is, okay, did you use when you were at work? Did you use when you were hanging out with your friends? How did it affect your relationship with friends? How did it affect your finances? How did it affect your living situation? And I just go through all these responsibilities and relationships and how our addiction affects those, and then I go into how it affects our the way we view ourselves, the way we view the world, and the way we view the world, the people that live in it. And we kind of go through unmanageable thought patterns, unmanageable beliefs we may have about the world or ourselves, and it's just a series of questions that I go through, while at the same time defining what unmanageability may be, what manageability is. So I encourage the client to think of a role model that they have in their life who they believe is one of the people who manages their life the best. And what areas do they have that you see as strengths that you need to incorporate into your daily living? So it's almost like it's like I'm subconsciously teaching them the strategies in which to identify a sponsor, perhaps, you know. I'm teaching them the strategies in which to do all sorts of things that they may need to sustain recovery outside of treatment. So they don't need to see my beautiful face again at this facility or another facility for that matter.
I love it, and I love the way you kind of come at it from every angle possible, so that someone who is having a hard time understanding can grab hold, you know, and grab hold of that teaching technique and an approach, because you're hitting it from all angles. I think that's a strong approach.
Thank you. Yeah, you know more about what I'm doing than I do.
I know that in recovery often that one of the challenging things, and you mentioned this about, you know, having 4 series on relationships, is that relationships can sometimes be that catalyst to relapse, and that, you know, that relationships are difficult. How do you address that piece? Because that's one of the things I think that a lot of, I mean, all of us want to be loved, right? We want that connection, but sometimes that is really unhealthy when we're in recovery. How do you address that?
So when I focus on relationships, I primarily focus on the unhealthy, destructive relationships and how our choices, beliefs, and behaviors have resulted in those. So it's usually, I want us to look at our own right versus wrong behavior and our good or bad outcomes, and I basically want to take an inventory of those, and we do that with relationships as well. So with our relationship, and mind you, the way I always let my clients know that, mind you, where your relationships are right now is a natural, instinctive state of the relationship deriving from the circumstances that you have had with these people, these places, or these objects, you know, because it's the way a relationship is the way in which 2 or more people, places, and objects interact. So I need to not just think about a relationship as me and one person, but I need to think about it as how is this relationship affected by a cigarette? How is this relationship affected by laziness? How is this relationship affected by dishonesty? You know, why is it that people have, you know, maybe heroin addicts have a poor relationship with a syringe? Why is that? Well, you know, look at a heroin addict's day-to-day living. You know, of course they're going to have a poor relationship with a syringe. It would be a natural instinctive state of mind for a client to have a desire to use upon the, you know, visual and the actual scene of a needle. That in itself may release dopamine, which could cause the client to get motivated enough to pursue the use of that very syringe. You know, and if they aren't aware that their brain works like this, which most of them aren't because they may not have gone to college, then they're going to be walking around not knowing why they have the desire to use. And even concepts. We can even have a relationship with concepts as well. Some people may not even have a relationship with the idea that they can maintain sobriety for more than 3 months because they never thought about it. They've never searched in their right and wrong behavior long enough to find an example of how they may have done it in the past. So with these relationships, it's a very, very in-depth discussion on how this is a dimensional relationship. You know, I often give this as an example. Me and my baby, I have a 1.5-year-old baby. Me and her, totally cool. If I'm holding her in my arms, no big deal. It's actually, people would look at that and say, wow, that's amazing. But if I introduce a relationship with a cigarette while holding my baby, so now it's me and my baby and a cigarette, now there's an issue. So we look at relationships and how the introduction of drugs and alcohol can affect those relationships and have negative consequences because we are powerless over the outcome if we don't manage it appropriately. Ooh, sorry about that. That was but that's kind of how I do that, dude.
Well, it's a hot topic too, and I love the way you bring in all of the different elements of, you know, smoking is a decision that we make, but it does affect the relationships around us, for instance, and that's the one that you brought up, and especially if you're holding your baby, right?
Yeah.
And
another one I give real quick, sorry, is like smoking before I say you buy a new car and you're like, Jimmy, I want to go for a ride in my car. And I'm like, cool. And I light up a cigarette and you're like, what are you doing? I'm like, let's go. They're like, dude, I just bought a new car. What are you doing? I'm like, no, it's cool. I insist I smoke in your car. And often addicts insist upon people. And I'll insist that I smoke in your car. And they'll be like, no, you can't smoke in my car. And the cigarette is the only thing that is causing this problem. Otherwise, we would be in the car right now and driving. But because of my cigarette addiction, now there's a problem.
I love it. You bring it to life so well. Jimmy, let me ask you about what you do outside of groups and education. You know, what do you do outside of that, and maybe even include, you know, the Jimmy Diamond stage name and what you do there.
Yeah, awesome. So outside of group, family is number one. So I often am finding ways to spend time with my family, and, you know, spend time with my daughter, my girlfriend Jessica, and everything like that. Also, exercise is really important to me. I work really hard on, like, taking care of myself outside of groups because with so much going on, it's really easy to get burnt out. So not only am I focused on maintaining, like, healthy exercise and everything, but it's also really important to maintain healthy relaxation as well. So, you know, I'm always scheduling time to just, like, sit down and chill and not be on your phone and do stuff like that. I'm always exercising and cooking and creating intellectual property and writing books and, you know, trying to, you know, do stuff like that, making new t-shirts and everything. And Jimmy Diamond is a whole story within itself. That's my stage name. I have an IMDb page, Jimi Diamond. I started stand-up comedy back in high school, and when I walked onto an audition late. I actually left the business meeting. So I moved to Georgia and helped open a 40-bed detox facility and a 40-bed partial hospitalization. And I was in a meeting when I was working at this corporate company for addiction treatment, and I saw this opportunity for a audition, and my whole life flashed before my eyes, and I just heard every single person was like, "Oh, Jimmy, you're really funny, dude. You should be an actor. Oh, Jimmy, you're funny. You should be an actor. Why don't you do TV? You should be in movies." And I just heard all of those in my head at once, and I stood up out of this business meeting, and I walked to my car, and I just left this business meeting. I went to this audition for this TV show pilot, and I got the role. And just in a long story short, and Jimmy Diamond was a name that I came up with back in college with a bunch of my friends, just fucking around, thinking that I'm just joking around, But when I actually got a role, they were like, "Oh, do you have a stage name?" I was like, "Do I have a stage? Are you kidding me? Jimmy Diamond. Write that down, dude. Put that down for the stage name." And they did, and it stuck. And now acting is another thing that I do on the side. I usually do my own marketing for my acting, and once every quarter, I'll usually get a gig. We either stand in, extra, or something else, and it's a real fun little hobby that I get to do. So that's a little bit about Jimmy Diamond.
That's fantastic. And what about your comedian career? Where do you see that going?
It's cool because from that pilot that I did, I made a lot of really awesome, amazing friends in the industry. And, right now, I just see it, to be honest, I see it as another way to stay clean. That's it. And I tell my clients this, dude. I'm like, bro, if I am in acting class for 3 hours a week, that means that's 3 hours I'm not thinking about getting high, and I'm around people who are sober, clean, doing the right thing. There are so many multiple pathways of recovery that if you are open-minded and creative enough, you can see acting class as a method and a route to recovery. So right now, I just see it as, and the same thing with Attainable Dreams. I don't see where it's going to be, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years from now. Right now, I see it's working. I see that I'm doing a really good job at it, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So, in my opinion, that's what my higher power asked me to do, and if I can just continue to do that, he'll handle the rest.
I could not agree more. I think it's incredible.
What about in clubs?
So I do, I haven't done an open mic since just before COVID. So a week before COVID, I had done open mic, and it was my first time doing it in Atlanta. And since COVID, I have not done it. I see all my acting friends getting back up on stage, and that's enough pain to motivate me to get back up there. But you gotta write material, you gotta create content, so I can't just go up there and not be funny, dude. So I gotta come up with some funny jokes and stuff before I get back up on that stage,
But what's that environment like? Does that feel like an environment where you can control yourself? Does it feel like a safe place for you?
Yeah, it is, because it is, to me, laughter is uncontrollable joy. And I love laughing. I love making jokes. I love funny things. Once I heard, I don't know who said it, maybe it was like Shakespeare or something, but life can either be a tragedy or a comedy. And I just go about my life just being grateful that I'm here for another day. And when I'm in that environment, you know, it's not like I'm just there to laugh. I'm there to be better at my craft. I'm there to meet people. You know, it's not like an environment where people are getting shit-faced. It's not an environment where people are like doing cocaine in the bathroom. It's like when I go to do open mics, the only other people who are going to the open mics are the other comedians. You know, so they're supporting me in my jokes. They're supporting me and giving me tips the same way that a community of like Narcotics Anonymous would, you know, with anyone's recovery. They're just, instead of giving me tips on my recovery, they're giving me tips on my jokes, you know.
Well, I think you're incredibly talented, Jimmy, and you've got your hands on a lot of things, so it's kind of fun to have you on today. If someone wants to get a hold of you and talk with you about what you do with Attainable Dreams, and you know maybe they want to book you as a comedy act as well, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me. My email is attainabledreamsllc@gmail.com. My cell phone number is 781-760-3312. I don't care, call me. And if you want to check out some of my videos, some of the content that I put out there, you can follow me on Facebook at Attainable Dreams LLC. And yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
I want to thank you for giving back to the recovery community that really helped you and get you back on your feet, and being so passionate about it, because I think it makes a huge difference, as you are finding out.
Yeah, thank you. I just don't want any more of my friends to die, you know. The other day, my dad just retired. He's 60 years old, and he was like, you know, so-and-so passed away. I can't believe it, you know. And I was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. My friend died too. And he was like, what the fuck, Jimmy? What do you mean, dude? Like, what, are you trying to one-up me? And I was like, no, I genuinely know what you mean. Like, my friend died, and I'm single-handedly trying to make sure that doesn't happen to any more of my friends. And it's just a sad realization when I'm, you know, as a 30-year-old man, I'm going through the experiences that like a 60-year-old man is going through because of my friend's choices around drugs and alcohol. And if all I can do is go in there, make them laugh, make them smile, and be a little bit more okay with being an addict, then I'm so happy to do that. It's my pleasure.
Super powerful. I appreciate your message and the work you do, Jimmy. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy.